Hey, how's it going everybody? Mike Bradley with Chris Bradley behind the camera again, and today we're just going to be doing another cooking tutorial, and we are going to be making roasted rosemary potatoes in the oven. So let's get started. So the first thing we're going to want to do is cut these potatoes, and usually what I do is I cut them into small pieces depending on the size of the potato. See, this one is about the regular size of potato. If you cut it into fourths, I'd usually say that that's a good size right there. Then it goes in the pan. This one, however, is just a little bit bigger, so we're going to cut that in half, and then we're going to cut it by the end, more than halfway towards the end, so we get smaller pieces. See, we're leaving a little bigger piece there, and then we're going to cut again. So this one turned into 6 pieces. No big deal. Even this one could be a little big, so we can just cut that again. Really, it's just a rough chop. It's, to no specifications whatsoever. Just trying to get these potatoes small and in the pan. And see, these two are a little bit smaller, but it doesn't really matter, We're still going to cut them into fourths because, some people like the little ones. Some people like the little, they shrivel up nice. They get nice and crispy the smaller they are. So I say just cut them all into fourths. Unless they're a little big, then we cut them a little bit bigger. A little bit smaller. So I'm going to go ahead and cut up the rest of the potatoes, and then when we get them all in the pan, I'm going to meet up with you for step 2. So what we're going to want to do next is coat all of these potatoes in olive oil so, they start to crisp up in the oven. And how we're going to do that is we're just going to take some olive oil. Say it's about, 2 tablespoons. Then we're going to take our glove right here. You could use your hands, but I use the glove because I don't like to get my hands all oily. It's a little bit annoying. And after we cover all these potatoes in olive oil is probably one of the most annoying and yet crucial steps in the whole process, and that is we have to get one layer of potatoes. See, they're all on a flat layer, and we want to try our best to have them all facing upwards and skin side down. And the reason we want to do that is because we are going to season them next, and we want the seasoning to get into the spores of the potato and not be blocked by the skin. And then once they're in the roasting process, once they're in the oven, after they've been in there for about 20 minutes or so, then we jumble them up. But you'll see, we're just going to get all of the potatoes facing upwards, as best as we can. And once you see that your potatoes are all facing the right way and are all in one layer, it's good to keep them all. You don't want them all stacked on top of each other. You want to give them the opportunity to touch the hot metal and, really think for themselves. You don't want them to be jumbled all on top of each other, at least for the first process of this cooking. And, it doesn't have to be perfect. Like, this looks fine to me. I'm sure I missed some, but it's perfectly okay, because this looks like we got a majority of them. And we are now going to move on to the next step. I'm going to throw this away, which is seasoning. So we're going to start with a little bit of salt. We're going to be pretty generous. We want every single one of these guys to be salted. I'd say that was like, about a teaspoon. And there's another teaspoon. And then there's a half a teaspoon. And just another pinch just to be sure. And I like to use some fresh crack black pepper. We don't want to go crazy with that, but we want to make sure that they're getting enough. Make sure you see a little bit on every single potato, or make sure you get all your zones. That looks good to me. And then we're going to add some garlic powder. It looks like I'm running low, but I still have plenty to get this done. You can be pretty generous with the garlic powder because everybody loves a nice garlic potato. Make sure they're all covered. And last but not least, we're going to put on the rosemary. When it's in season, we use fresh rosemary, but unfortunately it's the middle of the winter, so we don't have fresh rosemary, but the dried works fine. I'd say grab, a nice little handful, maybe even a little more than that, and just start sprinkling it all throughout the tray. Just like before, you just want all these potatoes to feel the love and get hit with that rosemary, and then just another dash more for good measure. And that looks perfectly fine to me. And right after that, we're just going to grab a little bit of butter. I'd say this is about half a tablespoon of butter or so. We're just going to cut that into 1, 2, 3, cut it in half, 4, 5, 6 pieces. And then we're just going to take that and distribute it throughout the pan. You really don't need too much butter. I like to cook things and have the taste of the butter, but really not have it be like this incredibly unhealthy process where, it's just drowning in butter. We got the olive oil in there, we got the butter in there, and now we're going to take some tin foil and cover it. Notice how, again, I said it before, but notice how I did not mix up after seasoning. We want all those potatoes facing upwards with the skin on the bottom. And then we are going to put this in the oven at 400 degrees. And then after about 20 minutes or so, 25 minutes, we're gonna give them a nice shake around and jumble them so all the seasoning gets spread out, all the butter gets distributed, all the oil starts flowing and whatnot through all the parts of the potato. But for this first part, we just want them facing upwards so all the seasoning can sink into those potatoes. And, we'll see you when we start to jumble. And so I just grabbed the potatoes out of the oven, and now the time has finally come for us to give them a nice little mix. We're going to keep the foil on top because we still want them to kind of steam inside themselves and cook themselves in the pan. But now we're going to get all those flavors moving around. The salt and all the garlic and the rosemary and all those flavors have sunken into the potatoes. So it's time to give them a zhuzh. And then back in the oven. All right, guys, so now what you're going to want to do after the potatoes have been in there for about 20 minutes, which I seem to not be able to do because I'm wearing oven mitts, but you don't want to touch this with your bare hands because it's very hot. You just want to remove the foil because the potatoes have been steaming in there. Oh yeah, look at that steam coming off. Nice. Nice. Whew, those are looking good. Wow. Then what we're going to want to do is, oh, I lost one. Make sure they're still, somewhat flat, and then back in the oven to finish off and get some color for about another 10 to 15 minutes. I'd say probably closer to 15, or even longer if you like a nice crisp. See you guys soon. All right, and I'd say that these potatoes, oof. Wow, look at that. They got a nice little crisp on top. They're cooked all the way through because they've been steaming. Give them a nice little jumble again. Wow. And unfortunately, folks, these things are way too hot to taste right now. I recommend letting them cool down just a little bit. But rest assured, I'm sure that they taste amazing. So, once again, from our kitchen to yours, this has been roasted rosemary potatoes. Have a great night.